Extroverted feeling is an interesting thing. It's my fourth function, and half the types prefer to use it in their top four. My perspective on it is that extroverted feeling is essentially setting aside your own thoughts and your own feelings to try to get along. That's really the best way that I can describe it. Some people say it has to do with harmony. I think it's a little bit overused word. I think happy is a word that I hear come out of FE dominant people's mouths quite often. And my experience with it has been that the idea that it's really this big difficulty between logic and emotion isn't really the case. It isn't really that it's that irrational or that FE using people are really that difficult to talk to if you're a thinking person. They can be difficult because they have a hard time making choices. I think that's the single biggest thing I've noticed about people who use FE in the top two, particularly ESFJs and ENFJs, is that they're so concerned about the welfare of the people around them or what is going to make other people happy that they have a hard time making simple binary choices, which is the introverted thinking concept. So, if you ask an FE dominant person whether they like your hair longer or shorter, very often they'll say, I actually like you with both. Or they'll say, I don't know. If you ask them what do they want to eat for dinner, they don't know. They need some kind of group consensus to come to a decision. It's like my mom was an ESFJ. I knew her for 41 years before she passed away. And a bunch of my aunts and uncles are ESFJs or ENFJs. I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not mistyping them. I know these people very well for a long time. And if you sit in a room full of FE user people, like I'm an FE user, believe it or not, I'm an ISTP, I'm not really a cold-hearted bastard. I actually do care about people, believe it or not. You sit in a room full of ESFJs and ENFJs going around the living room trying to make a decision of where to go eat at a restaurant, and everyone's like on their phones and everyone's talking to each other because they're all gossiping about what's going on in the world, because that's a big piece of extroverted feeling. And someone like myself realizes that they're hungry, so they will say, hey guys, it's getting on 5:30. I know that most people eat dinner around 6 o'clock. What do you think about getting to a restaurant and getting something to eat? And nobody's paying attention. So I'll ask like the head of the household, ESFJ, what do you think about getting dinner? I think we need to get everybody motivated to get some dinner. And they'll say, I don't know, whatever you want. And I'll say, okay, I'm the youngest person in the room. I don't really think I should be making the decision for everyone or forcing everyone to make a decision. And then the ESFJ will say to an ENFJ across the room, hey, what do you want to have for dinner? And then they'll look up from their phone or whatever and say, whatever you want, whatever everyone wants. I'm fine with whatever everyone wants. And then it goes around the room and around the room and around the room. And what I learned from my INFP friend, because believe it or not, I'm an FE user too, and it's even more difficult for me sometimes because it's inferior, it's my fourth function. When I have to sit and over-process a certain amount of FE, use FE a lot, it makes me tired. Eventually, what I learned from my INFP friend was just make a decision. That was what she would tell me when I would tell her how monumentally frustrating this was. It's like, yeah, you're the youngest person in the room. Just make a decision and say, hey, we're going to King's for dinner. Or we're going to whatever. And it's amazing because then they all say, well, that sounds good. Well, what do you think? Yeah, that sounds good to me too. Okay, yeah, is everybody happy with that? Well, yeah, because they don't know what they want. Okay? Like, even though it's my fourth function, sometimes I don't know what I want. Okay? I'm not saying I'm immune from this. Sometimes I'm worse than they are because it's my fourth and it gets exhausted and I'm tired. Okay? The biggest thing is that FE people are not okay if you're not okay. Like if they feel connected and responsible for you in some way, if they feel you're part of their little flock or family or whatever it is, if you're not okay, they're not okay too. You know? Like if you're depressed or angry or upset, they don't want you to feel that way. And healthier ones feel it pretty deeply. Okay? So, a big confusion that arises between most people that are new to personality theory is the difference between FE and FI. And in reality, they could not be more different. TI is more like FI than FE is like FI. FI is really your own feelings. It's how you feel about something. If you ask 50 different INFPs how to describe FI, you'll get 50 different answers. If you ask most ISFPs or ESFPs, they'll go, I don't know, because they're not big word definition people, you know? ISFPs and ESFPs are very tactile. They're very physical. And when you ask them to describe something deep and complicated, a lot of times they say, I don't know. I don't really know how to answer what you want. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this. I'm saying that's what you get. But if you ask INFPs, you get 50 different answers. And a lot of that's because NE jumps in and tries to make a lot of uniqueness to how the individual INFP is experiencing FI. But it's internal. It's part of your brain. Okay? The decision-making functions are really part of your brain. The only things that you really feel anything with are the sensation functions, which is your connection to your body. So when, for instance, INFPs talk about deep feelings, or ENFPs talk about deep feelings, they're really talking about their connection to introverted sensing, which is your sensations inside your body. Extroverted sensation is much more the outside of your body, introverted sensation the inside. So when they talk about deep feelings, or I felt gutted by this experience with FI, they're talking about their own internal feeling in their body. FE is not really like that. Like you ask most ESFJs how they feel about something, they have no idea. You ask an ENFJ to talk about their emotional problems, and most of them clam up. Most of them need a support group to do it. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I just mean that most do, that I've experienced. And it's again because your feelings are connected to the people around you through FE when you're using FE. Your own feelings are inside. Introverted feeling versus extroverted feeling. So, what you'll find is that once you start to understand some of this stuff, like FI and FE are like this different. The thinking and feeling functions make your decisions. The sensation and intuition functions are how you perceive reality and abstraction. Sensation is reality, intuition is abstraction. So, if you're constantly feeling like you need to warp the truth to make other people happy, or, yeah, I should just say that. I mean, extroverted feeling, this is going to seem unflattering, but even I'm guilty of this to an extent. My main process is very truthful and very blunt, but extroverted feeling can spare other people's feelings. Okay? Like, most INFPs are completely confused when they think they spare other people's feelings. Most people see them as cold and aloof and rather harsh in some ways in the way they talk, because FI and TE is time focused and it's very different from FE. FE is not time focused. Like when you talk to an FE person, they feel bad when they have to be time focused. I've noticed this again and again with ESFJs, ENFJs, INFJs, ISFJs. They know that they have to be time focused, but they feel bad about it. Like they will apologize. They'll say, "I'm sorry, man, but I got to get back to what I'm doing." And you can see it in their body language that they feel bad for having to be time focused. Okay? Because FE is the polar opposite of TE. You know, an ESFJ has TE eighth. For them, being time focused is stressful. Nothing is more time focused than TE. I think that describes it pretty well. It's connected to TI, which you can watch my other video on TI. It's on the same axis. If you have FE, you have TI. So when an FE user is real stressed, they can be much more blunt and direct with TI, and much more cut and dried. But the function still is primarily concerned with the social group and the social world. FE is about entertaining people. It's about caring for other people. Like a lot of FE users work in human resources, you know, FJ types, a lot of them work in human resources, or they work in bigger companies where they're around a lot of people. Even the introverted ones that want to go home and be by themselves at the end of the day still usually feel like they need to be connected to a group of people in some way, because their FE just needs that. Okay? Where FI people, it's a little different. I'm going to stop there because this video is getting longer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.